3 hours earlier, the sleek human transport ship Olive Branch drifted silently toward the Zephyrian homeworld of Christos Prime. Its hull gleamed white against the star-scattered void, broadcasting peaceful intentions with every diplomatic signal known to the galaxy. Inside the ship's modest quarters, Sarah Chen stood before a mirror, practicing being someone else. She adjusted the simple black suit, softened her posture, and let genuine warmth fill her eyes. The transformation was remarkable, from deadly operative to gentle diplomat in moments. Elena Vasquez, she whispered to her reflection, testing the name on her tongue. Cultural attaché from Earth's diplomatic corps. Specialist in first contact protocols. The real Elena Vasquez was safely back on Earth, recovering from a convenient case of Rigelian flu. Sarah had volunteered for the substitution when intelligence suggested the Zephyrians might be planning something unpleasant for humanity's representative. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Captain Morrison's weathered face appeared on the wall display, his expression grim. Ambassador, we're receiving some concerning chatter from Zephyrian military channels, he reported. Are you certain you want to proceed with this meeting alone? Sarah smiled with Elena's practiced diplomatic warmth. Captain, isolation and xenophobia thrive in darkness. Sometimes the only way to build trust is to show complete faith in peaceful intentions. What she didn't tell him was that her faith lay not in Zephyrian goodwill, but in her own ability to handle whatever they threw at her. The diplomatic suit concealed enough weaponry to level a city block, and her body itself was a weapon honed by decades of training and genetic enhancement. Morrison nodded reluctantly. Very well, Ambassador. But we'll maintain position just outside the system, ready for immediate extraction if needed. That won't be necessary, Captain, Sarah replied, but I appreciate your concern. As the transmission ended, Sarah completed her transformation. Elena Vasquez was a kind woman who believed in the power of words to bridge any gap between species. She carried herself with gentle confidence, spoke with measured wisdom, and genuinely cared about building a better galaxy for all sentient life. Sarah Chen, on the other hand, was something the galaxy wasn't ready to meet. Not yet. The transport ship shuddered slightly as it entered Christos Prime's atmosphere. Through the viewport, Sarah could see the impossible beauty of the Zephyrian capital city. Towering spires of living crystal that sang in harmonious frequencies, their surfaces refracting light into aurora patterns that danced across the sky, was beautiful enough to take your breath away. It was also a fortress that had never fallen to outside attack in 10,000 years of Zephyrian history. Sarah found that detail particularly interesting. The ship touched down on a landing platform that seemed to be grown rather than built, its crystalline surface forming a perfect circle of geometric patterns. As the airlock cycled, Sarah felt the familiar tingle of a different atmosphere, higher oxygen content, with trace elements that made the air itself shimmer slightly. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stepped onto Zephyrian soil with a genuine smile of wonder and curiosity. 3. Zephyrian escorts awaited her, their forms towering and magnificent. Unlike humans, they seemed to be composed entirely of living crystal, their bodies translucent and refracting light in mesmerizing patterns. Each stood over 12 feet tall, moving with a grace that belied their massive size. Ambassador Vasquez, the central figure, spoke, its voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. I am Guardian Thelanos. The Council of Voices awaits your presence. The honor is mine, Guardian, Elena replied, her voice carrying the warm formality of a seasoned diplomat. Your world is breathtaking. The stories of Christos Prime's beauty pale in comparison to the reality. The compliment was genuine. Sarah had always appreciated deadly beauty, whether in weapons or worlds. As they walked through the crystal corridors, Thelanos spoke of Zephyrian history with obvious pride. The civilization was ancient beyond human comprehension, their crystal cities having stood for millennia while younger species rose and fell across the galaxy. Your people are quite new to the galactic community, Thelanos observed. perhaps too new to understand the delicate balance that maintains peace between worlds. There was something in the Guardian's tone that made Sarah's combat instincts twitch, but Elena simply nodded thoughtfully. "Every species was new once," she replied. "We hope to learn from those with greater wisdom and experience." They entered a vast atrium where fountains of liquid light cascaded upward in defiance of gravity. The effect was mesmerizing, but Sarah noted the strategic positioning. Anyone approaching the council chamber would be clearly visible from multiple angles, with no cover and limited escape routes. Her diplomatic smile never wavered. "The Council of Voices has ruled Zephyrian space for 7,000 of your years," Thelanos continued. "They have seen many species make promises of peace while secretly preparing for war." "An unfortunate reality of galactic politics," Elena agreed sadly. "Humanity hopes to prove that genuine peace is possible between different peoples." As they approached the massive doors to the council chamber, carved from a single piece of singing crystal, Thelanos paused. "A word of advice, Ambassador," he said, his melodic voice taking on a warning tone. "The Council respects strength above all else. Your species' reputation for gentleness may not serve you well here." Sarah felt a cold smile threaten to break Elena's warm expression, but she maintained her composure. "Thank you for the counsel, Guardian," she replied. "I'll keep that in mind." The massive doors sang open with a harmony that resonated through her bones. Beyond lay the Council of Voices, 12 crystalline beings arranged in a perfect circle around a central platform. Each was unique in their crystal composition, some clear as diamond, others swirling with internal storms of color and light. As Elena Vasquez stepped into the chamber, Sarah Chen made note of 17 different ways to kill everyone present. Old habits died hard, but for now, diplomacy would reign. After all, Elena Vasquez believed in the power of peaceful dialogue. Sarah Chen believed in more practical solutions. The question was which of them the Zephyrians would choose to meet. The council chamber stretched impossibly high above Elena's head, its crystal dome refracting the light of 3 suns into patterns that shifted like living art. The 12 council members regarded her with eyes that blazed like captive stars, their massive forms radiating an authority built over millennia. "Approach, human delegate," commanded the voice of Councillor Vextar. His crystal form was the largest and most imposing, a deep purple composition that seemed to contain swirling galaxies within its structure. "State your species' petition to this ancient assembly." Elena walked forward with measured steps, her heels clicking against the crystal floor in a rhythm that echoed through the vast space. She stopped at the exact center of the chamber and offered a respectful bow. "Honored counselors," she began, her voice carrying clearly in the resonant space, "I bring greetings from the United Earth Federation and an invitation to friendship between our peoples." A low harmonic sound rippled through the council, the Zephyrian equivalent of derisive laughter. Councillor Xanthara, her crystal form shot through with veins of silver, leaned forward. "Friendship?" she asked, her voice like breaking ice. "Your species has existed in space for barely 2 centuries. We have shaped the galaxy for 70,000 years. What could primitives possibly offer us?" Sarah felt her tactical assessment, protocols automatically cataloging threats and calculating response times. But Elena maintained her diplomatic composure. "Councillor Xanthara raises an excellent point," Elena replied smoothly. "Humanity is indeed young compared to your magnificent civilization. But sometimes fresh perspectives can illuminate new possibilities." She gestured gracefully to the space around her. "Your people have achieved wonders. Cities that sing, art that lives and breathes, harmony between consciousness and crystal that defies understanding. But in all those millennia of perfection, have you perhaps become insular?" The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Councillor Mordek, whose form crackled with internal lightning, rose to his full intimidating height. "You suggest we have grown stagnant?" His voice boomed like thunder in caverns. Elena shook her head, maintaining her gentle smile. Not stagnant, counselor. Complete. Perhaps so complete that new forms of growth become difficult to imagine. She paused, letting her words settle before continuing. Humanity brings something different to the galactic community. Not wisdom, not ancient knowledge, but adaptability. We solve problems in ways that might seem crude to refined civilizations, but sometimes crude solutions work where elegant ones fail. Vexitar's massive form shifted, crystals rearranging themselves in patterns that Sarah recognized as preparation for aggressive action. Her enhanced reflexes calculated 17 possible attacks, but Elena continued speaking as if addressing a gardening club. For instance, she said conversationally, the Helix plague that's been devastating Outer Rim colonies for the past decade. Your researchers have applied the finest techniques known to crystal-based civilizations. The Quantum Collective has brought their probability mathematics to bear on the problem. The Eternal Archives have consulted 10 million years of medical data. The council members exchanged glances, or what passed for glances among beings of living light and crystal. The Helix plague was indeed a topic of great concern throughout civilized space. And yet, Elena continued, the plague continues to spread. Perhaps it requires a less sophisticated approach. Human medicine is crude, compared to yours, but we understand biological adaptation in ways that crystal-based life might not. Counselor Lixandra, the youngest of the council at a mere 3,000 years old, leaned forward with what might have been interest. You claim your primitiveness is an advantage? She asked. I claim our differences could be complementary, Elena replied. A crystal singer and a human engineer approaching the same problem might discover solutions neither could find alone. The chamber fell silent except for the harmonic resonances of the living architecture. Sarah used the pause to run through combat scenarios, 12 opponents, each with approximately 15 times her physical mass, possessing natural armor that could deflect most conventional weapons. She gave herself even odds. Elena, meanwhile, simply waited with the patient confidence of a skilled negotiator. Finally, Vextar spoke. Your words paint pretty pictures, human, but words are wind. Actions reveal truth. He gestured, and holographic displays materialized around the chamber, showing human ships in various star systems. We have observed your species' expansion, Vextar continued. Everywhere you go, you build weapons. Your exploration vessels bristle with armaments. Your research stations are fortresses. You speak of peace while preparing for war. Sarah's jaw tightened slightly. The intelligence briefings had mentioned Zephyrian paranoia about military preparations, but seeing their surveillance capabilities firsthand was sobering. Elena maintained her composure. Counselor Vexitar, humanity has learned hard lessons about the dangers of being unprepared. We hope never to need our defenses, but we've encountered species that don't share our peaceful intentions. Convenient excuse, sneered Counselor Fairgon, whose crystal form pulsed with angry red light. Every warmonger in galactic history has claimed self-defense. Then how would you suggest we prove our peaceful intentions? Elena asked genuinely. The question hung in the air for a long moment. Sarah watched the council members' energy patterns shift and realized they had been building toward this moment from the beginning. Vextar's form brightened with what Sarah recognized as anticipation. Prove it by demonstration, he declared. Submit to judgment by combat. If humanity truly comes in peace, then their representatives should be willing to accept discipline for their species' aggressive expansion. Elena's eyebrows rose in surprise that was only partially feigned. Combat? Counselor, surely there are other ways to— The ancient laws are clear, Vextar interrupted, his voice booming through the chamber. Those who would address the council of voices must prove their worthiness through strength. Your species wishes recognition, then show us what strength humanity possesses. Sarah's tactical systems went into overdrive. This was clearly a setup. The Zephyrians had planned to force a confrontation from the beginning. The question was whether they intended to humiliate humanity or actually eliminate their representative. Either way, they had badly miscalculated. Elena raised her hands peacefully. Counselors, I came here as a diplomat, not a warrior. Surely the mighty Zephyrian civilization doesn't need to prove its strength against a simple ambassador. Every species must know their place, Zenthara declared coldly. Better you learn. It now then force us to teach harder lessons later. The chamber's crystalline walls began to glow brighter, and Sarah realized they were sealing the space. No way out except through whatever test the Zephyrians had planned. Elena sighed deeply, the sound of a peaceful woman forced into an impossible situation. Very well, she said sadly. If this is the only path to understanding, then I accept your challenge. Inside Elena's mind, Sarah Chen smiled. Finally, the council members rose as one, their crystalline forms blazing with anticipation. Vexitar stepped forward, his massive bulk casting shadows that danced across the chamber walls. Then let strength speak where words have failed, he declared. But as he raised his fist to deliver what he thought would be a lesson in humility, something in Elena's posture shifted. Her shoulders squared slightly, her breathing deepened. Her eyes focused with the precision of a targeting system. The blow that had been meant to establish dominance instead became the first move in a dance that would reshape the balance of power across 3 star systems. Vextar's fist struck Elena's face with enough force to shatter stone. She absorbed the impact, stepped back once to maintain her balance, and dabbed at the blood on her lip with a tissue from her pocket. Thank you for clarifying your position, counselor, she said calmly. Then Elena Vasquez began to die, and Sarah Chen started to wake up. The transformation was subtle at first. Elena's gentle diplomatic posture straightened into something more predatory. Her breathing shifted from the measured calm of a negotiator to the controlled rhythm of a warrior preparing for battle. Most, telling of all, her eyes lost their warmth and gained the flat, analytical stare of someone who saw the world as a tactical environment. Counselor Vextar drew back his massive fist for another blow, expecting to see fear or submission in the human's face. Instead, he found himself looking into eyes that assessed him with the dispassion of a scientist examining a specimen. Interesting, Sarah said, her voice carrying none of Elena's diplomatic warmth. Force equals mass times acceleration. Your mass is approximately 800 kilograms. Impact velocity was roughly 12 meters per second. Total force delivered. She paused thoughtfully. About 9,600 newtons. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. The human's clinical response was not what they had expected. For comparison, Sarah continued, dabbing at her lip again, a human heavyweight boxer delivers roughly 1,500 newtons of force, so you hit about 6 times harder than our strongest fighters. Vextar's confusion was evident in the shifting patterns of light within his crystal form. What manner of response is this? Assessment, Sarah replied simply. I like to understand the parameters before engaging in any new activity. She rolled her shoulders slightly, and the motion somehow made her seem both smaller and infinitely more dangerous. Now, shall we discuss the rules of engagement? Or are we proceeding without structure? Guardian Thalanos, who had been silent since escorting Sarah to the chamber, stepped forward with obvious concern. Counselors, he began urgently, perhaps we should reconsider. Silence, Vextar roared, his crystalline form blazing with offended authority. The human will learn respect for their betters. He swung again, this time with both fists, intending to crush the small figure before him. The attack was blindingly fast by Zephyrian standards, a blur of crystalline death that could punch through armored vehicles. Sarah wasn't there when the fists arrived. She had moved perhaps 6 inches to her left, but the timing was so precise that Vexitar's massive attack sailed harmlessly past her. The counselor's momentum carried him forward off balance as Sarah stepped calmly to one side. 47 millisecond attack duration, she observed clinically. Telegraph phase lasted 1.3 seconds. Interesting that a species of living crystal would develop such predictable kinetic patterns. Vextar spun around, his crystalline features contorting with rage. Impossible. No organic creature moves that fast. You're absolutely correct, Sarah agreed pleasantly. No unmodified organic creature could track those movements, but then, I'm not entirely unmodified. She held up her hand, and for the first time, the council members noticed that her fingertips seemed to shimmer with an almost imperceptible metallic gleam. Genetic enhancement, she explained conversationally. Reaction times improved by a factor of 12. Bone density increased by 200%. Muscle fiber replacement with carbon nanotube weaves, and a few other modifications that would probably violate several treaties if I discussed them in detail. The chamber had fallen completely silent, except for the harmonic resonance of the crystal walls. Even the other council members seemed frozen. In disbelief, Counselor Zenthara found her voice first. You are not a diplomat." Sarah tilted her head thoughtfully. "Well, that's complicated. Elena Vasquez is absolutely a diplomat. Brilliant woman, actually. Speaks 17 languages and has negotiated peace treaties on 4 different worlds. She's currently on Earth, with a case of Rigelian flu that was completely coincidental and definitely not induced by any human intelligence agency." She smiled, and the expression was sharp enough to cut crystal. "I, on the other hand, am something different. My name is Sarah Chen, and I am what happens when diplomacy fails." Vextar's rage overrode his confusion. With a sound like shattering mountains, he launched himself at Sarah with enough force to crater the crystal floor. This time Sarah didn't simply evade. She moved forward inside the arc of his attack and placed her palm against his chest. What followed defied every law of physics the Zephyrians understood. Despite her tiny size compared to Vextar's massive bulk, the counselor was suddenly airborne, flying backward to crash into the chamber wall with a sound like a crystal avalanche. The Q. Impact left spiderweb cracks spreading across the supposedly unbreakable crystal surface. Sarah brushed an invisible speck of dust from her sleeve and looked around at the remaining council members with polite interest. "Anyone else?" she asked. Pleasantly. The council chamber erupted into chaos. 11 crystalline beings, each ancient beyond human comprehension and accustomed to absolute authority, suddenly found themselves facing something they didn't understand. Counselor Mordek, crackling with internal lightning, was the first to recover from the shock. "Seize her!" he bellowed, his voice resonating through the crystal structure of the building itself. Guardian Thelanos hesitated, but 3 other Zephyrian guards materialized from concealed alcoves in the walls. They moved with the coordinated precision of a military unit, their crystal forms shifting into more aggressive configurations. Sarah observed their approach with professional interest. "Fascinating. You've restructured your molecular lattices for combat enhancement. Density increase of approximately 30%, with stress point reinforcement at joint locations." The lead guard reached her first, swinging a crystalline fist that could punch through starship hulls. Sarah caught. His wrist and the guard's momentum came to a complete stop, as if he had struck an immovable object. "Unfortunately," she continued conversationally, holding the guard's arm steady despite his efforts to break free, "increased density also means decreased flexibility." She twisted her grip slightly, and the guard's crystalline arm shattered like glass, sending harmonic screams of pain echoing through the chamber. The second guard attempted to tackle her from behind. Without turning around, Sarah drove her elbow backward into what would be a solar plexus on a human. On a Zephyrian, it was the primary resonance chamber that controlled their internal energy flow. The guard collapsed, his internal light flickering, like a dying star. The third guard, showing wisdom beyond his companions, stopped his attack and backed away slowly. "Smart choice," Sarah acknowledged, then turned her attention back to the council. Vexitar had pulled himself from the crater his impact had created in the wall. Crystal dust fell from his form like glittering snow, and the harmonic frequency of his voice carried an undertone of something the Zephyrians hadn't felt in centuries. Uncertainty. "What are you?" he demanded. Sarah considered the question seriously. "That's actually quite complex. Technically, I'm still human. 93% of my genetic code remains unmodified, but the other 7%, she shrugged. Let's just say humanity has been preparing for galactic citizenship more thoroughly than most species realize." Counselor Lixandra, her youthful crystal form trembling with fear and fascination, managed to speak. "The genetic modifications, They're impossible. No species could survive such extensive alteration. You're right, Sarah agreed. Most couldn't. But humans are remarkably adaptable. We've survived ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, global floods, and our own tendency toward self-destruction. Genetic enhancement was just the next logical step. She walked slowly around the circle of council members, and each one instinctively stepped back as she passed. You see, when humanity first discovered we weren't alone in the universe, we realized we had a problem. We were small, weak, and new to galactic politics. Most young species in our situation become vassals or victims. Sarah stopped directly, in front of Vextar, looking up at his towering form without a trace of intimidation. But humans don't accept limitation very gracefully, so we decided to become something more. Vextar gathered his courage and authority, drawing himself up to his full imposing height. Even if you are enhanced, you are still just one individual. We could call the Crystalline Guard, summon the full might of— Counselor, Sarah interrupted, gently. You're thinking tactically when you should be thinking strategically. She pulled out what appeared to be a standard diplomatic communication device and activated it. A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing the space around Christos Prime. The display was empty, except for the small, human transport ship. This is what your sensors show, correct? Sarah asked. One small diplomatic vessel, minimal armament, crew of 12. The council members nodded uncertainly. Sarah touched another control. The display flickered, and suddenly, the space around Christos Prime was no longer empty. 7 massive warships materialized, their angular black forms bristling with weapon arrays that could crack continents. This is what's actually there, Sarah said conversationally. Stealth technology is another area where crude solutions sometimes work better than elegant ones. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Even the harmonic resonance of the living crystal walls seemed muted. Counselor Zenthara's voice was barely a whisper. 7 dreadnoughts in our home system passed all our defenses. Oh, that's not the impressive part, Sarah said with genuine enthusiasm. The impressive part is that each of those ships has a crew of exactly 1 person, people like me. She deactivated the hologram and put the device away. Now I should clarify something important. Those ships aren't here to threaten you. They're here because intelligence suggested this meeting might not go smoothly, and humanity takes the safety of our diplomats very seriously. Vextar's crystal form was now pulsing with rapid, agitated patterns. You came here to intimidate us with a show of force. Actually, Sarah replied, I came here to prevent a war. The statement hung in the air like a challenge to reality itself. Sarah began walking slowly around the chamber again, but this time her movement had the quality of a predator circling prey. You see, counselors, humanity has been monitoring galactic communications for some time. We know about the coalition of ancient races. We know about the plans to contain humanity before we become a threat. We know about the military buildups in 7 different star systems, all positioned to blockade human space. She stopped and looked directly at each council member in turn. What you don't know is that humanity has been aware of these plans for 18 months. Long enough to prepare appropriate responses. Counselor Mordek's lightning-filled form crackled with barely contained energy. You speak of responses as if you could threaten civilizations that ruled the galaxy when your species was still living. In caves, Sarah smiled, and this time there was nothing diplomatic about the expression. Counselor, when my species was living in caves, we were already the apex predator on our world. We didn't climb to the top of the food chain by being peaceful. We got there by being better at violence than anything else that wanted to eat us. She gestured toward the shattered remains of the guard's arm. Crystalline biology is remarkable, nearly indestructible under normal circumstances. But everything has a resonance frequency. Everything has a breaking point, and humans are very, very good at finding breaking points. The chamber began to fill with a new sound, a low, harmonic frequency that seemed to come from the walls themselves. It took the council members a moment to realize it was the building's emergency response system, activated by stress fractures spreading through the crystal structure from Vextar's impact. How? Zenthara whispered. How could primitives develop such capabilities? Sarah's expression softened slightly, showing a glimpse of something that might have been sadness. Because we had to, she said simply. Because the universe is vast and dark and full of things that want to hurt us. Because we learned early that being peaceful doesn't mean being helpless. She looked around the chamber one final time. I want you to understand something, counselors. I didn't come here to threaten you or demonstrate humanity's military capabilities. I came here to offer friendship to a species I genuinely respect and admire. Elena Vasquez believed that understanding could bridge any gap between civilizations. She paused, letting that sink in. But when you chose violence over dialogue, when you decided that might makes right, you stopped dealing with Elena Vasquez. The harmonic emergency tones were growing louder, and cracks were beginning to appear in the chamber's dome high above. Now you're dealing with the other side of humanity, the side that survived everything our universe could throw at us and came out stronger. Sarah took a step toward the chamber's exit, then paused and looked back. The question now, counselors, is simple. Do you want to continue this conversation with Elena Vasquez, the diplomat, or with Sarah Chen, the weapon? But before anyone could answer, the massive crystal doors to the chamber exploded inward in a shower of singing fragments. And what came through those doors made everything that had happened so far look like a gentle disagreement between friends. Through the shattered remains of the crystal doors came something that made even Sarah pause in recognition. The figure was humanoid, but clearly not entirely human. Taller than average, moving with fluid grace that suggested extensive modifications beyond even Sarah's own enhancements. The newcomer wore the same black diplomatic suit as Sarah, but where Elena's clothing had been simple and understated, this person's attire seemed to absorb light itself. Most unsettling of all were the eyes, completely black, reflecting no light at all. Ambassador Chen, the figure said, its voice carrying harmonics that resonated strangely in the crystal chamber. The Council of Terra sends regards. Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Genuine surprise followed immediately by tactical concern. The Council of Terra was a name from classified briefings so restricted that even her clearance level only provided fragments. Ambassador Kane, she replied carefully. This is unexpected. Kane moved into the chamber with movements that seemed to flow like liquid mercury. The surviving Zephyrian guards instinctively backed away, their crystalline forms resonating with frequency patterns that Sarah recognized as fear responses. The situation has evolved beyond diplomatic parameters, Kane announced, seemingly addressing both Sarah and the Council simultaneously. Intelligence indicates that the coalition of ancient races has moved to active implementation phase. Vextar, still struggling to understand what was happening in his own council chamber, managed to find his voice. And what is this? Who dares enter the sacred chambers without... Kane turned those black, light-absorbing eyes on the counselor, and Vextar's words died in his throat. Counselor Vextar, Kane said pleasantly, your species has just committed an act of war against humanity by assaulting our diplomatic representative. Under galactic law, we would be justified in reducing your homeworld to component atoms. The temperature in the chamber dropped noticeably. Sarah realized that Kane wasn't using metaphor. The matter-of-fact tone suggested this was a genuine tactical option under consideration. However, Kane continued, humanity prefers more elegant solutions to diplomatic problems. Kane reached into their jacket and withdrew what appeared to be a simple, crystalline data pad. They placed it on the central platform of the chamber, where it began to project a three-dimensional star map showing the local galactic region. This is the current tactical situation, Kane explained. Red indicates coalition forces. Blue indicates human assets. The hologram revealed the truth that made every Zephyrian in the chamber stagger backward in shock. What they had thought was a vast coalition armada stretching across dozens of star systems was now marked in blue. Hundreds of ships, thousands of installations, entire star systems that the coalition had counted as allies were now showing human control. This is impossible, Zenthara whispered. The coalition has been building this alliance for decades. How could... 18 months, Sarah said quietly. That's how long humanity has known about coalition plans. More than enough time to make counter-preparations. Kane nodded approvingly. Ambassador Chen has been conducting the diplomatic phase of operations with characteristic efficiency. However, her cover has now been compromised. The datapad projected a new image, Sarah's real service record. Even heavily redacted, the list of operations was staggering. Entire pirate fleets eliminated, terrorist organizations dismantled, 3 different attempts at genocide prevented through targeted action. Sarah Chen, Kane announced formally. Codename Gentle Death. 47 successful deep cover operations, 0 failures, 0 compromised assets under her protection. Vextar was backing away now, his crystalline form dimmed with something that might have been realization or might have been terror. "You're not diplomats," he said slowly. "You're killers." Kane's expression remained pleasantly neutral. "Counselor, we prefer to think of ourselves as problem solvers. The methods vary depending on the nature of the problem." Sarah watched the interaction with growing unease. Kane's presence meant the situation had escalated beyond anything she had been briefed for. The Council of Terra only sent their own operatives when conventional solutions had been exhausted. "Kane," she said carefully, "what aren't you telling me?" Kane's black eyes turned to her, and Sarah saw something that made her enhanced reflexes automatically trigger threat assessment protocols. "The Coalition didn't plan to contain humanity," Kane said simply. "They planned to sterilize human space, entirely. Every colony, every ship, every man, woman, and child of our species." The words fell into the chamber, like stones into still water, creating ripples of shocked silence. "The attack was scheduled to begin in 6 hours, Kane continued. "Coordinated strikes on Earth, Mars, the outer colonies, and every human vessel in space. The diplomatic meeting here was meant to ensure no human representatives survived to coordinate a response." Sarah felt Elena Vasquez die completely as the full implications hit her. This hadn't been about dominance or territorial disputes. It had been about genocide. Vexitar seemed to be shrinking, his crystalline form losing cohesion as stress patterns spread through his structure.